There are so many awesome Batman villains. The Joker, Scarecrow, Catwoman, Professor Pig. Professor Pig? What the frick is Professor Pig doing on this tier list? He's just some random guy in a pig mask who cuts people up for fun. Just because I didn't want him in Grey's Anatomy doesn't mean we want him in the Batman universe either. This little piggy went to F tier, and that's where he's gonna stay. But anyway, all I'm trying to say is that today we are gonna be ranking every single Batman villain on this tier list right here. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, first up we got Harley Quinn. And Harley Quinn, in my opinion, is an S tier villain. I'm a huge fan of Harley Quinn. She's a great sidekick to the Joker. I'm a big fan of her skills and abilities. I think it's awesome when she uses that huge hammer and just absolutely bashes people with it. Now, that being said, Harley Quinn does have an evolution, and in my humble opinion, some evolutions are way better than others. My all-time favorite evolution of Harley Quinn is the first one right here, from Batman the Animated Series. I think Harley Quinn honestly peaked here. This is my favorite Harley Quinn, at least animated. The problem when you start to get on in the years, as you start to evolve Harley Quinn a little more, is that these costumes just start to look awful. I mean, aside from like some obvious jokes from Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, even ones from like Birds of Prey or the Suicide Squad, just really to me do not look that good and do not represent an absolute maniac, which Harley Quinn absolutely is. So I really think they could have just stopped the animated series and left that forever, and I would have been a happy camper. I mean, this is absolutely peak to me. Killer Croc. Killer Croc, I think, is a very, very middle-of-the-road B-tier villain, and here's why. Killer Croc will never in his lifetime ever make some sort of grand plan about how to defeat the Batman. No. What Killer Croc's gonna do is pop out of the sewer when Batman happens to be down there, and just with all 500 pounds of brute lizard strength, try to annihilate him from the ground up. Swiping, pushing, biting, all the works. I think Killer Croc is honestly a very B-tier villain because he's so simple. But in a way, that's kind of a blessing. That makes him so good in my opinion. So B-tier is where I'm gonna leave him. Clayface, in my opinion, is kind of the same level as Killer Croc. I think these are very similar villains in a lot of ways. Clayface, I will say, does have a little bit of a cooler advantage because he can shapeshift, which is just genuinely a cooler ability than Killer Croc's has, which is to be a mutated lizard. So I think Clayface I might have to put a level above because shapeshifting is so useful and powerful, and it is also a very unique idea for a villain. I gotta give it to him. So I think Clayface is A tier, and I'm very satisfied with that. I think these characters are very similar, but I think he's a little bit of a better villain, Clayface is. The Riddler, good old Riddler. And now, as you might know, Riddler's name is Jedwerd. Coincidence? I think not, but you know what? I'm gonna let this one slide this time. I'm not gonna sue you, DC, not yet. The Riddler, I think, is just a straight-up S-tier villain. I mean, you can't beat him. He's one of the ultimate Batman villains. He's one of the consistent ones, and he's one of the most creative ones. There's been a lot of people who played him over the years. We had Jim Carrey, we had Paul Dano in the most recent The Batman movie. I'm going to try my best not to let that influence me. I'm going to try to rank the characters on this list off their own merit as, you know, ideas in a way. Because if I was ranking this off, I don't know, freaking movie appearances, then, I don't know, Jim Carrey's Riddler would be like C tier, and Paul Dano's would be like A tier. So I'm just going to try to rank them off the characters that I think I envision them as in the comics, and the way the designers and creators envision them as. And as an idea, a state of mind, to quote the worst Joker, if you know, you know, I think Riddler as an idea is an S tier villain. I'm going to leave him at S tier, and I'm very happy with that. Plus, look at how cute his little Lego figure is. Oh, shoot, I have the chroma filter on. I must have the chroma filter on, because I swear to you, he's a very vibrant green in my real life world. But they're kind of mutilating my boy. You get the idea, though. You get the idea. I'm sorry, Jedwerd. They don't like us Edwards. They're out to get us, but we'll do our best. Next up is what I think is supposed to be the Black Mask. Now, this is not the best picture of him at all. There are far better ones out there. I guess I kind of could tell it's a Black Mask, so job well done. Black Mask, I think, is a B-tier villain, because in terms of physical strength, obviously, that's not what he's made for. He's a crime boss. He's a mob boss. He's Ewan McGregor, if you didn't know. Ewan McGregor plays him in the Birds of Prey movie. He's a mob boss. He's not supposed to be muscle. I guess he's relatively smart and tactical, but I don't know. In my mind, I always kind of put him next to Penguin as, like, you know, mob bosses who have their own little pockets of crime in Gotham. And I always put him below Penguin. I think Penguin's a better villain and a more interesting villain. This guy doesn't have much going on besides the fact that a black mask is fused to his face. I don't know, maybe I'm misremembering Black Mask and what all of his little quirks are, and I'm sure that's possible, but I'm gonna put him B tier. I think that's very fair of me. Next up is Talia al Ghul, and holy frick, I just looked at my camera and the background is disgusting. Boys, I am mortified to be coming before you now. I'm 13 minutes into filming, and this room is an absolute pigsty. I apologize profusely. Every single other time I've made a video, I've said, Jedwerd, you are not pressing that record button until you've cleaned up your background. So the boys and the subscribers and the fans don't have to look at the garbage dump you live in. So before we continue, we're gonna do a little Jedwerd cleanup time lapse. But to do that, of course, this is a Jedwerd video. We need some epic music, and today I'm thinking Mac Miller.
I feel like $1 million, but my money don't really feel like I do.
Record time. Back at it, boys. Back to the tier list. I'm sorry you had to see that. Let's get back into it. To be honest, I've never really understood the hype around Talia al Ghul. I've always thought she was just a worse version of Ra's al Ghul, who was occasionally used as a love interest for Batman. I mean, I know she's kind of a big villain, so I'll put her A tier for that, and I know she's got some mystical powers, but I'm not wildly impressed by her. Ra's al Ghul over here, however, I do think is kind of a Sigma. He's obviously an S tier villain. This guy is one of the core Batman villains that ever exist, so that's that, I think. I think that's a pretty fair ranking. And if there's something really special about Talia that I'm missing, feel free to let me know in the comments. Deathstroke, Slade Wilson. Now, I gotta be honest, it is crazy, absolutely, dare I say, near criminal that there are two villains named Slade Wilson and Wade Wilson, and they both have near identical abilities and costumes. That is crazy to me. I must be honest, boys, I've only ever seen Wade Wilson in two things. I've seen him, one, in that fight in the Arkham style animation, where it's this fight that they live actioned in real life, because I saw some interview with the guy who live actioned it. They live actioned it and turned it into animation, and it's a very cool fight, very interesting, very fun to watch. I'm a big fan of that fight. The other thing is Teen Titans Go to the movies. That is the Teen Titans Go movie, and Deathstroke is the villain in that. Now look, I'm a little biased, a tad, because in that movie, Deathstroke was voiced by Will Arnett, who, if you don't know, is Job from Arrested Development. Big fan of Job from Arrested Development, so whenever I hear his voice, I get a little happy inside. But I know that is biased to me, and I know that's unfair to the other villains on this list. So as a villain, I think I gotta give Deathstroke A tier. I mean, he's a formidable opponent, and he's very interesting. He's just a fun villain to watch. When Deathstroke's in something, you know it's gonna be real. Jason Todd, the Red Hood. Now look, boys, I've played Batman Arkham Knight. I've seen Batman Under the Red Hood, the animated movie. I'm a big freaking fan of Jason Todd. I'm a big fan of Red Hood. I think Red Hood is actually one of the cooler villains, and I think his motivation for villainy, you know, being Jason Todd and Batman's former Robin and all that, I think that is genuinely so cool. And I think he's an S tier villain. I really do. I'm a big fan of Jason Todd. What is this guy? Is this the Joker who laughs or something? The Batman who laughs? I've seen this guy everywhere. I see people talking about this guy on Twitter all the time. Someone who laughs. It, to me, just really seems like a poor form Joker. Because look, that's Joker under a helmet, and I don't know what this is from. Really, I can't rank this. Really, it's unfair for me to rank, but I don't really want to add another tier. You know what? I'm just being lazy. Let me add another tier right now. You do you, boo. There we go. Let's leave it at that. Now, sliding on in next is Firefly, and Firefly is one of the most underutilized Batman villains I have ever seen in my 38 years of existence on this earth. Firefly's a cool villain. He can fly, he has flamethrowers and stuff, but the only thing he's ever used for is Batman Arkham Knight side missions. That's exclusively what he's used for. He's in, like, basically nothing else. I think as a character, he's underutilized. I think he really is probably a B tier villain. He's pretty cool. He's very interesting. If I knew a little more about him, I'm sure I'd like him more. But again, he's just criminally underutilized, so B tier it is. The Joker. The Joker is obviously, without a question, S tier. There's no other way to put it. Let's put him right up here at the front of S tier, because this is Batman's arch nemesis. This is, when you think of a Batman villain, you think of Joker, exclusively. Across all of his iterations, well, almost all of his iterations, let's not talk about Jared Leto's Joker that much if we can help it, but across most of his iterations, Joker, the reason he's such a good villain is because he challenges a part of Batman that almost no other villain challenges, his integrity. All these other villains challenge things like his strength, his intelligence, his will, all these things, but none of them challenge his integrity so much as Joker. What I mean by that is Batman has one rule and one rule only: thou shalt not kill. Very biblical man when it comes to not killing in that sense. And no other villain has Batman ever wanted to kill more or come closer to killing than the Joker. And the Joker knows this, and he wants Batman to kill him. He wants them to be till death do we part, and he means that literally, till death. So that is one of the key reasons that Joker is such an awesome villain and easiest S tier I've ever seen in my entire life. Now, coming up next, it's the subscribe button! Hallelujah, boys! Another Jedwerd tier list coming on, and another subscribe button placed on the tier list. Now, I'm putting this subscribe button in You Do You, boo. And you want to know why? It's because you really have free will. You have the ability to do you, boo. But I just want to let you know that only a small percentage of people who watch this channel are actually subscribed, and I really appreciate it. It would mean so much to me if you hit that subscribe button. You know what? This is a Batman tier list, and you know what would be fitting for a Batman tier list? For me to flip a coin, like our good friend Two-Face coming up, good old Harvey Dent. I'm gonna flip a coin. Heads, you have to subscribe to the channel right now. You must go down and subscribe if it lands on heads. But tails, ooh, tails, you do not have to subscribe, and I'm gonna up the stakes a little bit. If it does land on tails, if you are subscribed to the channel, you must go down and unsubscribe after the coin flip. I swear. I'm betting it all on this coin flip. Alright, this is for all the marbles, which is why I had the cool sunglasses on. Here we go. Boom! Let's see what it is. I can't even see anything, the light's too strong. Heads! Sorry boys, I don't make the rules. I'd appreciate it if you subscribe. I know a lot of you won't anyway, but Rules are rules, but you do you, boo. That's why I'm putting the subscribe button. So anyway, let's move on. I've been on that subscribe tangent a little longer than I meant to, and I gotta put my sunglasses back now. The Mad Hatter. Mad Hatter, I'm a big fan of. I think he's actually a really cool creative villain. There's a couple great episodes of him in Batman the Animated Series, and if you've ever played Lego Batman the video game back in the day, flashback to all of our childhoods, he was the first level of the Joker levels, and he was actually a fire level. Big fan of the Mad Hatter. You know what? I'm putting Mad Hatter, I gotta put him B tier. He's not powerful enough to put him A tier, and he's not moving enough as a villain. I mean, essentially, he's just a stalker. His entire purpose in the movies and the shows and as a character is he's trying to go after Alice, this one girl he's in love with, and the way he thinks he's gotta do that is by putting a card and mind controlling her. I mean, that's not the move, buddy. I'm going to be dead honest with you boys. I know absolutely nothing about our friend Hush right here. I know absolutely nothing. So because of that, I'm gonna have to put him in You Do You. I really cannot tell you one singular thing about him, and I think it's really unfair for me to rank him. He seems pretty cool. Seems like a nice guy. I'm sure if I got to know him a little bit, I love him. Don't really know him. Don't know him a little bit. Don't know him at all. You do you, boo. I can never remember how to pronounce this guy's name, but I know it's a palindrome. I know it's like SZA's, like the singer SZA. I mean, he's a pretty generic guy. All I know is he like cuts himself for he scars himself for every single kill he gets. He has like a million scars all over his body for every single person that he kills. He loves killing people. So what I'm really hearing is he's the least creative villain on this list, basically. But I think I gotta put him, honestly, I'm putting him C tier. He doesn't have any special abilities. He just likes killing people. And Batman, if I recall correctly, dispatches him very easily, basically every time. I think he's an easy C tier. I see no reason to put him anywhere other than that. Deadshot. Deadshot, I gotta be honest, I also know very little about. The only version of him I've seen is the Will Smith version from the Suicide Squad movie. Not the good Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad, the garbage one. And I'm not gonna lie, he was pretty good in that movie. He was one of the few redeeming qualities. He was a cool character. Will Smith played him pretty well. You really got the sense of how accurate and lethal he was with a gun. I kind of put him on the same level as Slade. I put him on the same level as Deathstroke. I'm gonna put him A tier. I think it's pretty fair at me. Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange is one of those villains whose name I can't believe I remember. Because I do know it's Hugo Strange. I also know that he's very unsuccessful as a villain. His whole goal is to defeat Batman. And spoiler alert, he's never defeated Batman. I feel like he's also kind of a C tier villain. I'm putting it right up there with SZA. Now this next guy right here, I believe is Prometheus. And I cannot believe they deemed him fit to put on a Batman tier list. Batman villain tier list. I mean, this guy's really obscure. I mean, I look at this. I just Googled him. I just looked him up to figure out all of his quirks and little details. And he's like a twisted mirror image of Batman. He watched his parents get slaughtered in a Bonnie and Clyde style shootout. At their death, he swore from that day forward to annihilate the forces of justice. I mean, get your own lines at this point. You're not Batman, buddy. And I think it's crazy to be like, okay, we need Batman's biggest villains. Let's get Two-Face, Scarecrow, and Prometheus. What kind of logic is that? I mean, honestly, going right up there with the subscribe button. The Ventriloquist. The Ventriloquist is actually a pretty cool villain in my opinion. I think it's kind of cool that he's this weak, mild-mannered guy, but he has this doll that he uses as his outlet of evil and villainy. I think at the end of the day, he's very limited by the fact that he's like a 65-year-old man who's like working through this tiny wooden doll, and if he doesn't have that wooden doll, he loses all of his bravado and becomes a total wuss. So I think as a villain, it's a cool idea. I just think he's like a B tier villain at best. I really do not think he's got that much going for him. I am absolutely 100% convinced that they only made the villain Man-Bat so they could rearrange Batman's name and be like, oh, we're so cool, look what we did, look at this cliche, Man-Bat. I'm convinced that's the only reason they ever made him. Because there's nothing to him. He's just a guy who drank a potion and turned into a giant bat. And now his name's a Man-Bat. That's about it. I mean, I gotta put him B tier because he's kind of like a Killer Croc-esque character. Very little beyond the surface. They're just giant animal mutations that fight Batman and do crime. I think this has to be Azrael, but it does not look like any iteration of Azrael that I've ever seen. Not that I know Azrael that well, it just doesn't really strike me as an Azrael-like character. And even if it is Azrael, I know literally nothing about Azrael. Absolutely nothing. I'm gonna put him in You Do You, boo. I just don't know anything about him. I'm unfit to rank him. Selena Kyle, Catwoman. Now, Catwoman, I think, is actually a great villain. Catwoman, I'm going to put in S tier, because I think Catwoman is one of the iconic Batman villains that when you think of Batman, you think of Catwoman. On top of that, her skills and abilities are really cool and very unique and very fitting to her cat-like burglar character. And she's one of the few characters who is good in basically every iteration of her, except for the Adam West 60s Batman. She's a good character, and she's a very, very compelling character. The Court of Owls. Now look, I've never played what's the game called? Batman like the Gotham Knights game. It's like the game set after Arkham Knight with Batgirl, Robin, Nightwing, and Red Hood. I know the Court of Owls are the main villains in that, but I've never played that, and I've never seen anything about the Court of Owls outside of that. So I'm gonna put them in You Do You Boo just because I don't know much about them, and I think it's unfair to rank them. And man, a lot of villains are in the You Do You Boo. I really am not as up to date as Batman villains as I thought. Although to be fair, these guys are all obscure except Hush and Court of Owls, who it is my fault. I don't know more about those guys. I'll admit it. All right, we're down to the last 6 villains, I think, and coming up next is Two-Face. And Two-Face, in my opinion, is a really unique villain. I'll give him that. I think the idea for him is genius, being like a schizophrenic who has 2 sides of him in one body. He's split down the middle. He decides everything with a coin flip. I think he's a very cool villain. I think he's very well done a lot of times. Here's the thing though, I don't think he's that strong. I don't know how powerful he really is. I think he's kind of a mob boss character, but I think he does do mob boss the best. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm not gonna put Two-Face anything lower than at least A tier, and I think I'm gonna put him S tier. I think that's fair. I think Two-Face is just one of those iconic villains that you can't really forget. Coming up next, we have Bane, and Bane is, in my opinion, one of the slightly more overrated Batman villains. I think he was absolutely awesome in The Dark Knight Rises. He was a really cool villain. Tom Hardy played him well. The voice, the character, all of that I thought was very good. Now, The Dark Knight Rises movie was not very good, but that's a topic for another time. As a villain, though, he is like shockingly non-complex. He is just a guy who injects himself with trend for all intents and purposes, becomes absolutely huge, and just starts taking on Batman left and right and always loses. Except for The Dark Knight Rises. Coming up next is Scarecrow, and Scarecrow I think is an A tier villain. I think the idea for the character is really unique, and I think the design is absolutely awesome. I mean, I know he has a lot of them, but there are some absolutely epic Scarecrow character designs. As for the Fear Toxin, I think a character who's obsessed with fear and controlling fear is not only a really cool idea for villainy, but at the same time poses a huge threat to Batman, and is all the more impressive for Batman to overcome. When Batman can stand down Fear Toxin, look it in the eyes, and say, "I'm not afraid anymore," that is when you know Batman is an absolute legend, and that's the reason people like Batman so much. One of the reasons, at least. I think Scarecrow is an easy A tier. I'm very content to leave him in A tier. We are in the top 3 now, and coming up next is Dr. Freeze. But before we do that, boys, I'd like to introduce a new segment I'm going to start doing my videos called Things I Like and Things I Hate. Essentially, what I'm going to do is at the end of my videos, I'm going to start going forward and saying one thing I love, anything, and one thing I hate, anything. And it's not going to be related probably to Star Wars or Batman or Marvel or Lord of the Rings or any of those things, because guess what? I'm a human being outside of those realms, and I have my own ideas and opinions and personalities. So, today, the thing I love today is grape juice. I'm a big fan of grape juice. Nothing like waking up in the morning, rolling out of bed all groggy, heading over to the kitchen, and having a big old glass of sugar juice that tastes delicious. It is to die for. Seriously, I think we've all had it when we were younger, but probably haven't had it recently. If you haven't had it, I'd go to the store and get some. Pick some up. It is delicious. I love grape juice. That's the thing I love. The thing I hate? Drake. Even outside of like recent allegations, which are unverified, potentially untrue, but allegations, I really think Drake's music is absolutely the worst class of music I ever hear. I genuinely think Drake pulls up to the studio in his probably $1 million Bugatti. He pulls into the studio, hops into the studio, puts on the most generic beat in the background, and just starts talking in a slightly rhythmic way. I think he's just the most boring music to listen to, very uninteresting. I'm just really, honestly, the problem with Drake for me is how big he is for how good he is. To me, his skill is here and his popularity is here. And that's not fair to me. If his popularity was here and his skill was here, I'm fine with that. I just don't like how big he is for how bad he is. Now look, I'm not a heretic. I mean, come on, God's Plan, In My Feelings, those are some absolute bangers. I'm not an absolute psychopath, so cut me a little slack on that one. But in general, most Drake songs I find very hard to listen to and very not good. Anyway, this is today's Things I Love and Things I Hate. And I hope you enjoyed, and let's get back now to the final part of the video. We're gonna rank Dr. Freeze, and Dr. Freeze, I think, what's good, gangsters? It's Editor Jedwerd here from the future, which is why I'm not wearing the sacred purple Jedwerd shirt and instead wearing my Greta Van Fleet shirt that I got at their concert last night. Great band, love the band, not so great a concert, but you know what? That's a story for another time. I'm just here to say that in the video, I call Mr. Freeze Dr. Freeze a lot, and I genuinely do not know why, because boys, I know Mr. Freeze like the back of my hand. I know him well. The Ice Cream Factory and Lego Batman the video game, the original, I mean, come on, that was my playground when I was growing up. That's my home right there. So I do know it's Mr. Freeze. Please do not roast me in the comments. I apologize. Now, let's get back to the video, and Editor Jedwerd will be saying goodbye and say hello to the purple shirt. Bye. is an A tier villain. I think his motivations are absolutely awesome. His wife's dead and his wife's dying and he wants to cure her, so he needs to turn to crime to do that. I love his character design. I think the icy suit is really cool and very unique and definitely very signature. I mean, when he walks through the door and his chest is glowing blue, you know that Dr. Freeze just entered the building. I think that's absolutely sick. And obviously, his abilities, you know, his freeze gun, I think is really cool. All right, we're in the top 2 now, and the Penguin is number 2. And the Penguin, I think, is an S tier villain. Back when I was younger, I always thought Penguin was one of the cooler villains. I mean, they've kind of underutilized it in modern day, but his umbrellas back in the day were actually awesome. I used to love the idea of them. Just this simple tool you could walk around with, use in the rain, but it also has a gun, a sword, a knife, chainsaws, flamethrowers, missiles, gun. It was just the ultimate tool in my book. The Penguin's umbrellas, to me, embodied creativity and uniqueness, and oh, I just bumped my mic. I thought his umbrellas were cool, is what I'm trying to say. On top of that, I really like his mob boss aspect. I think of all the mob bosses in Gotham and in the Batman universe, Penguin is the most iconic and the coolest. I really like Penguin. I have an affinity for Penguin. I think Penguin's an S tier villain, and I'm very, very satisfied with that, and I'm not changing my mind anytime soon. Finally, last but not least, we have Poison Ivy, and Poison Ivy, I think, is a really cool villain. I think her powers are very unique, and I think she's one of the iconic Batman villains that everyone knows. I mean, the Batman Forever movie with Val Kilmer had Poison Ivy. That was a long time ago, and she was still in it. She was weird, she was goofy, she was kind of a terrible villain in that movie, I'm not gonna lie, but she still was there, you know? Poison Ivy is either A tier or S tier, and I'm gonna put her S tier. Anyway, boys, this is my final Batman villain tier list, and if you enjoyed this video, you need to watch this video right here, where I ranked every single Clone Wars villain in Star Wars. If you like this video, I know you like this video. It's very good, I'm very proud of it. Be sure to check it out. Thanks for watching, bye, have a good one, see you later, bye.